Following the ceasefire in Gaza, Israel launched a massive raid into Jenin, which is a resistance foot stronghold in the West Bank. We can put up this article here by Sharif Abdel Qaddous and Mariam Barghouti in Dropsite News. Just want to read from a little bit about this. They write, Israel launched a major military operation in the occupied West Bank on Tuesday, raiding the city with troops, military vehicles, and bulldozers, backed by airstrikes, drones, and Apache helicopters. At least 9 Palestinians have been killed and more than 40 wounded in the ongoing operation, according to the Ramallah-based Palestinian Health Ministry. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the goal of the, quote, large-scale and significant military operation was to eradicate terrorism in Jenin. Netanyahu wrote on Twitter, "We are acting systematically and decisively against the Iranian axis wherever it extends its reach." Now, this is coming as at the same time that there have been riots in Jerusalem. We can put up some of this footage over there because after some of the Palestinian captives were released by Israel as part of the ceasefire deal, Israeli settlers then kind of stormed into a refugee camp to try to take revenge over that. The IDF, or the Israeli police, showed up and saw masked men with guns and believed them to be Palestinians, shot at them, not realizing that they were Israeli extremist settlers, and critically wounded 2 of them. And the result of that shooting has been these riots that from the Israeli public saying, condemning the Israeli government for accidentally mistaking Israelis for Palestinians and shooting at them. And so while so far roughly 90 Palestinians were released as part of the hostage deal, already Israel has detained more than 90 Palestinians in the West Bank, giving a real kind of spinning the wheels feel to the attempts to reach some type of peace agreement here. At the same time, Trump's Middle East envoy, the man, Witkoff, who was able to kind of browbeat Netanyahu into agreeing to this ceasefire deal, said a couple days ago that he was considering a trip to Gaza to see for himself what the destruction has been like there. That was followed yesterday with, and we can put up F4 here, with an explicit invitation from Hamas to say that Witkoff is welcome to come and engage in direct talks with Hamas to see for himself what the situation is, and to hear directly from Palestinians and from Palestinian leadership, where they are on the unfolding ceasefire. Emily, Witkoff's intervention into this, at Trump's behest into this conflict, has seemed to change the tenor of it. But what Netanyahu is showing here, it seems, is that he is intent on ratcheting up violence, wherever and whenever he can. Now, Bezalel Smotrich was quoted as saying that this raid in Jenin was authorized by the war cabinet as a new kind of war aim in exchange for Smotrich and his party agreeing to the ceasefire in Gaza. So, in other words, if we're gonna sign on to this ceasefire, you have to launch this incursion into Jenin and make this not just a police action, as sometimes happens in Jenin, but a full-scale invasion. Netanyahu agreed to that, and is also saying that he holds open the possibility of, not just possibility, but almost the certainty of resuming the war in Gaza, but then enter Witkoff. Do you think that Witkoff or Trump kind of have the will to intervene here? Because it seems like they'd have to just constantly be fending this off. Like, this isn't the kind of thing you can do once and then it's done. They have to be there with their foot in the door, keeping it from closing at all times.
Well, and basically no Republican president other than Donald Trump would have agreed to this particular ceasefire deal. This is another way in which he totally confuses the boundaries, or he totally like sort of explodes the boundaries of acceptable policy maneuvering on the right. And so I don't know that people in Trump's orbit expected what you just laid out, Ryan, which I think is totally correct, because we know one thing Donald Trump is more sensitive about than just about anything else is looking a fool, being made to look a fool. He doesn't seem to particularly like Benjamin Netanyahu, we've mentioned before, but he reposted that Jeffrey Sachs video about a month ago, and he's had plenty of criticism for Netanyahu in the past. So I don't think he wants to put up with Netanyahu's, or what he sees as Netanyahu's bullshit. He doesn't want to look like he's being steered by Benjamin Netanyahu, and that he is not fully in control as Donald Trump. And that's the dynamic I think that's going to unfold with alongside this new ideological component, to the point about no Republican president, agreeing to this deal other than Donald Trump. I don't think most Republicans in Congress would have agreed to this deal, and maybe not even in his own cabinet. And so Elise Stefanik, as she was going through...
Before we get to her, one other piece that people have probably seen, Trump was asked about whether he thought the ceasefire in Gaza would hold at one of his Oval Office press conferences, and he said, "I doubt it." And it's not. He said it's their war, which I'm sure was cause for celebration in Tel Aviv among Netanyahu's circle.
Right, but what does that mean in terms of U.S. support? So
right.
Is that what's on the table with Donald
That's
Trump?
a very
Is he
good
saying
question.
This is your war?
Right. Is it our weapons in their war? Because that. Right, exactly. And what makes it their war rather than our war? So that seems to be his wish. Like, I think that's what Donald Trump wishes, that it was their war and not ours, but it is ours. Well,
and a big reason for that is because the sort of ideological convictions of the sort of coalition that's been part of the Republican Party for a long time that we'll see on display here is E5. This is Elise Stefanik getting asked. And remember, Trump's ambassador to Israel is Mike Huckabee as well. So when you hear Elise Stefanik's answer to this question, just bear in mind that this is, obviously we all know this. You don't even need to be reminded of this. A fairly consensus position among the sort of intellectual class of the Republican Party. Maybe not the median Republican voter, although I'm sure many would say yes. But here's how Elise Stefanik handled the question about the kind of ideological underpinnings of her position here.
Answers in my office, but I did ask you whether you subscribe to the views of Finance Minister Smotrich.
Who? I'm sorry, Finance.
Smotrich, this is the Israeli Finance Minister Smotrich, and the former National Security Minister Ben-Gvir, who believe that Israel has a biblical right to the entire West Bank. And in that conversation, you told me that, yes, you shared that view. Is that your view today?
Yes.
Okay. I think when it comes to this very difficult issue, if the president is going to succeed at bringing peace and stability to the Middle East, we're going to have to look at the UN Security Council resolutions, not just the ones on Lebanon, which we should enforce, but other UN Security Council resolutions. And it's going to be very difficult to achieve that if you continue to hold the view that you just expressed, which is a view that was not held by the founders of the State of Israel, who were secular Zionists, not religious Zionists.
Okay, so she's being confirmed for ambassador to the United Nations, and you could parse that in a bunch of different ways. I'm sure she could, or a defender of hers could argue that when she says she believes that there's a biblical claim to those lands, they just mean it in terms of like the Bible laying out the history of the Jewish people having a claim to being the indigenous people.
Well, the claim is different than right?
But, I mean, so I think the obvious, and an evangelical Christian like a Mike Huckabee would say that biblical Israel and the way that it's sort of described, not just in the Old Testament, but the New Testament, is referring to the modern political state of Israel. And that's not an uncommon belief in evangelical circles. It's not an uncommon belief in many religious circles. So I think that's likely the interpretation that's correct in this case, in her case, to explain why Elise Stefanik answered the question that way.
Yeah, you can say the word Israel is in the Bible. Like, okay, that's true. But like, what that has to do with UN security resolutions is like nothing.
It definitely makes any two-state solution, which is like the point that U.S. politicians push on Israel when Netanyahu says he doesn't believe in a two-state solution. That's the ideological position of even secular Zionists, even somebody like Netanyahu, and that's a pretty hard square to circle if you're trying to deal with the West Bank. And
so it's such a convoluted mess because of that. Out of control ideological like a relationship to Zionism that you're describing there, coupled with some other developments that we're seeing, not just the ceasefire that we have so far, but also we can put up this next element up on the screen here. Trump, in one of his first actions, stripped John Bolton of the security detail.
That's a great tweet, though, by the way. You should read it on the screen if people aren't looking at this.
Matthew Petty tweeted, the Iran deal 2.0 will be offering John Bolton as a blood sacrifice in exchange for building Trump Tower, Tehran, which is, like everything in this era, a joke, but also not a joke. Like, these are the times we're living in. Like, Trump just yesterday was talking about how North Korea has incredible condo opportunities because of the seafront, so much seafront property. He talked about how spectacular you could do a kind of condo rebuild in Gaza. So the idea of a Trump Tower, Tehran, is not ridiculous. And the idea
literally
of
doing one in
sacrifice,
Saudi Arabia. No, I mean, they literally announced, the Trump organization literally recently announced they're doing a second Saudi Arabian tower. Like, it's to your point, Ryan, like it's a joke, but they're also like literally building these towers and with countries that we do these like extremely important foreign relations with. And Trump is technically divested from Trump organization at all of that. But we don't need to open up the can of worms to say that the joke has some legs.
Yeah, and my view on the Bolton, I'm curious for your take on this. My view on the Bolton decision to not give him this 24-hour security anymore is, Bolton, like, I don't want anybody killed, but Bolton has made his choices. Bolton has decided to live by the sword, like the most militaristic kind of policy career that you could really conjure up in 20th and 21st century America. Like the body count that trails behind him is just completely countless. So he got to do that with his career. The public does not then have some special obligation to him because he made those decisions. Security details are insanely expensive. Like we don't know what it
millions
costs,
though.
But like millions and millions of dollars. Yeah. Like this is not a small amount of money to have a security detail on a single person like this. And so,
and correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan. He was the subject of an alleged Iranian assassination plot, and that's
right. And related presumably to his push to assassinate Qasem Soleimani, who was an Iranian official who was killed in Baghdad after landing in the airport. And then getting into a car with some other Iranian officials wearing a suit. He ran the IRGC and he had himself a huge trail of bodies behind him. He made his choices, but assassinating him with a drone in another country was a huge break with norms, and I believe that's the main thing that Iran has said that they're angry at Bolton for. For Trump to so quickly strip the security detail from him does to me suggest that he's serious about actually some type of Iran rapprochement, which he himself blew up by walking out of the Iran nuclear deal, and then entering into the Abraham Accords in an attempt to kind of combat and counteract Iran through a combination of an alliance between UAE, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. What's fascinating is that while we're inaugurating a new president here over in Davos, the World Economic Forum honchos are meeting. So of course the Saudis are there as well. You can put up F7 there. So the Saudi foreign minister at Davos gave a speech basically very strongly encouraging Trump to continue pursuing warm relations with Iran, so Israel's assault on Gaza over the last 15 months has created the kind of political pressure in the region that has pushed, paradoxically, Saudi Arabia and Iran closer together. China has actually helped to broker a rapprochement between them. And what the Saudi foreign minister is saying is keep that going. Like we don't actually need to be adversaries in the way that we are with Iran. And so if this is some kind of blood sacrifice fig leaf, maybe that joke of a tweet was not reading too much into it. And we'll go to this last element, and then we get your response to it. This is F8. Yesterday. So the headline here in Jewish Insider is pro-Israel Republicans alarmed over Trump's Defense Department appointee, and it's actually kind of plural. Yesterday, the Trump administration announced a whole slew of top political appointees over at the Pentagon, dozen or more names, and not a single neocon on that list, not a single Iran hawk on the list. They also announced that they were firing Brian Hook, who we reported on here, he was one of the hardest core Iran hawks in the previous Trump administration, and was brought in to be the chair of the State Department transition. And when he was appointed to that, a lot of people were like, oh, yikes! Like this is bad news. Like if you've got him in there, this seems like you're going to be organizing for a confrontation with Iran. The first thing he tried to do was try to get Mike Pompeo as Secretary of State. That failed, and now Hook himself has been fired. And Trump fired him. I don't know if you noticed this, in a hilarious way. He said, I have fired a bunch of idiots from the previous administration, and he put him on the list of those idiots who worked for the previous administration. What he was implying is that he worked for Biden. But he actually worked for Trump and was the chair of Trump's State Department transition. So just a classic Trump of like hiring the guy, and then when he fires him, saying he didn't even know him, and he's like pretending he wasn't the chair of the transition. And hey, I'm not going to call him out because get that guy out of here. I think Sagar posted something on Twitter yesterday saying like the list of names that were at the Trump department was just banger after banger. Like these are kind of anti-interventionist. You know these folks better than I do, but from my people in this world, they were thrilled at this, and the fact that Jewish Insider, which is a very strong reflection of the kind of AIPAC Likud wing, is alarmed, suggests that the excitement has some merit to it. What's your assessment?
Right. Yeah, they did this as well. I forget which publication it was. It was a conservative publication, and it was I think a relatively pro-interventionist publication that did this with Bridge Colby at the Pentagon.
They're alarmed.
Sagar's totally right that like this is, again, we were talking earlier in the show about the immigration hawks seeing this as a generational moment for a crackdown because they had these kind of 4 Biden interim years to plot a potential Trump return, and potentially with a popular vote win that they feel like is a mandate and the wind at their back. And they got basically exactly what they were looking for, and that'll have some interesting ramifications. But one place where it could be really positive is on foreign policy, where the conservative movement has made a genuine shift. Not everyone, of course, but Donald Trump, out with Bolton and in with these guys, in with the quote banger after banger list that you referenced from Sagar. Taking a look at who's at the Pentagon, you could say the same thing over at the State Department. It's shaping up, from what I'm hearing, to look really similar. So that's obviously not to say that this is going to be like Rand Paul's Pentagon and State Department, or Bernie Sanders' Pentagon and State Department. But But just about anything is better than the status quo we've been experiencing, and for the last how many decades. And whatever you think about Donald Trump, he is very good at disrupting the status quo. And if it's going to get disrupted, please disrupt our foreign policy, because it desperately needs new, fresh voices. And Trump is sincerely bringing them in. So we'll see where that goes. I mean, the Israel, he seems very happy with Steve Witkoff so far. Yeah. He seems very happy with the deal so far, even if a lot of his Republican allies are not. But this can all, I mean, obviously this is, we were talking about, this is the theme of the show, is his coalition of personnel is so fragile. His coalition of personnel worth, his coalition of supporters is fragile in and of itself. So there's just a lot that can change very quickly, but he's at least setting himself up in a much better position in terms of positive foreign policy outcomes than he did in 2017.
Yeah, and the reason we wanted to do all this in one segment is because all of those things are related. If Trump only cared about the Gaza ceasefire deal because of Gaza per se, it would fall apart. Because he doesn't really care about that. But the Saudi, Iran, and Israel relationship is key to that. Trump very much wants a Saudi-Israel normalization deal. Like that, he desperately wants that, and he wants that to be one of the things he does. In order to get that, Gaza can't be in a conflagration. There cannot be a genocide still going on in Gaza. To get that Nobel Peace Prize that we were talking about on the show last week would require an Iran, Saudi, Israel. You're not going to get Iran and Israel, but if you can get Iran and Saudi Arabia, Iran and the U.S., Israel and Saudi Arabia together in a deal, that's like Peace Prize worthy. And none of that can happen if Gaza is still undergoing the genocide. Like that. So that would be the structural reason that he would actually kind of push back on Netanyahu's effort to keep this going. The article you're talking about, by the way, also was in Jewish Insider, and the headline was, "Rumored for a Trump posting, Elbridge Colby's dovish views on Iran stand out." And then
it's just absolutely stupid. It's complete nonsense. He's a realist. Anyway, we don't need to get into it, but it is just idiotic.
And he's steamrolled through. Elbridge Colby is in there.
And people are very excited about it in the sort of DC MAGA world. They're very excited about it.
Yeah. So, all right, we'll see where that goes. Anyway, Emily,
right.
thanks for bearing with us. On the road. Have a safe trip.
Thanks for bearing with me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No, Ryan and I obviously both have full-time day jobs, so sometimes life takes us on the road, but just great to be here with you, Ryan, and hope you have a great rest of your week.
And we'll see you back here next week. All right, see you, everybody.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.